Good morning, Broncos fans. I hope you're doing well this morning. You are watching Legends of Mile High, and I'm your host, Thomas Hall. And this is a show where we talk current events and history. So today we are going to discuss the potential of having Sean Payton fix Russell Wilson. And we're going to talk a little bit about what he did for Drew Brees. So stick with me as we dive into that um, type of content today, and then maybe if we have some time at the end, we will do a little bit of historical discussion. So let's jump into a couple of the chats. So Jeremy Sean's coming in this morning. He says, appreciate you coming in, Jeremy. I appreciate you being here these early mornings. It says, morning, Thomas. To be fixed, Russ first has to admit he needs fixing. That isn't exactly on brand for Mr. Unlimited. Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to understand anybody has to understand when something goes wrong, and sometimes that takes a good coach to let that person know, or a good mentor or whatever, to let that person know that there's been issues. And I think he does understand that he had a down year, and I think he's made some comments recently about getting better. So I think he understands it, and I think he understands that really wasn't a fit for him. The problem with Hackett's offense was really it was based on a West Coast scheme, but it was kind of a convoluted scheme that didn't have an identity, and it didn't really. The West Coast scheme will fit Russell Wilson if it was done appropriately. And it's not. I'm not going to go through the all the history of the West Coast, but those tenants can help Russell Wilson if done correctly. Dave Glassman, thank you for coming in from YouTube, and Dom, thank you for coming in. Facebook, appreciate the shout out from Facebook. Says Dom says, "Good morning, Thomas, Scott, and Broncos country. Thomas, do you know how the interview went yesterday at UC Health Center, Denver Broncos for life?" I wish I did. I wish I knew how it went. I don't. It's kind of funny. You don't hear any tweets. You don't hear much information. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall in that room. But nope, I don't. I haven't got any real updates. But most of these people that are interviewing interview well. So I think it probably went well. It's all comes down to who they choose. Clayton Huron, thank you for coming in from Facebook. Morning Broncos country, he says. So good morning to you, and thank you again. Appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about what. Let's talk. Well, let's first assume that that Payton is the hire, and is he going to be able to fix Russell Wilson? So let's talk a little bit about Drew Brees, right? Because we can look at Drew Brees and we can compare what he did when he was at San Diego to what he did in New Orleans. So I'll first say that anyone that says that Drew Brees was an amazing quarterback before he went to New Orleans is not really accurate. I'll explain why. So if you've watched this show, you know that I've taken every quarterback season, qualifying season since 1960, AFL included, and I have adjusted each of those for era. So the 5 years surrounding that season, and then use that and created a score to compare across all eras. So it normalizes the era, and then you can look at the differences even in 20 years, the or 15 years, the NFL changes. So we can look at Drew Brees' career and compare it across those that entire time he was in the league. So if you look at what Sean Payton did for Drew Brees, and I'll just give you I have an image. I don't know if we can pop that up here real quick, Scott. So in all of Drew Brees' season, he had a really good season with San Diego, right? But that was, and you can see that top line. That season was his best in San Diego, but he had 6 or 7 equal to or better than seasons in New Orleans. So, and even in his best season in San Diego, he beat that many times. And then his second best season in San Diego was actually one of his worst seasons compared to all of them in New Orleans. He had a better season every season than he had in New Orleans. So, and his worst season came in San Diego easily. His 2 worst seasons came in San Diego. So and I know he went to the Pro Bowl but he had a great season. That season in San Diego in 2004 was a really good season in all of the NFL. It was 170th, right? 171. I can't remember exact. It was right in that era. So that's good. And if you look at these bars, I mean, that is the overall score that compared to era. So it takes into account interceptions, it takes into account touchdowns these are per game that they played. It takes into account yards and all the basic the major stats, right? So that we can compare. It's not like EPA or anything like that. So it's simple math. So it's not getting a crazy amount of statistics in there, so people can say I messed with the stats or anything like that. So anyway, but his other seasons, his best season in New Orleans was the 20th best season of all time. Now that's pretty amazing. The 20th best season adjusted for era of all time. That's amazing. And then a few other seasons were much higher, and all in the top 100. So let's just kind of dispel this notion that Drew Brees was this amazing quarterback before he went to New Orleans. We've got a couple more comments coming in. We've got Clayton coming in. Again, I appreciate that from Facebook. We're going to be a very dangerous team this year after we get a lot of people back in free agents and the draft. We have a ton of talent. Yeah, I mean, I think we have some. I think we're going to see the Broncos fill some holes for sure. There's going to be some holes in the team, but the nice thing about having a rich owner, they can manipulate the salary cap so that they can spend a little bit more money. So I think you're right. I think there is talent across the board. I just think, as we saw, as we all watched the Broncos with a different coach get a little bit more out of that depleted talent, as you say, the injuries. And I think that we also saw what Russell Wilson could do with a better coach. He had some pretty good games there. This last 2 games. I mean, the Kansas City second half was really good, and obviously he did perform pretty well. So I think I think that a different coach changes the attitude, but this is why Payton or another coach can do more with Russell Wilson. Well, first of all, we know Russell Wilson has the talent. He is shown over his career that he has elite quarterbacking skills. Now, he dropped off big time in 2022. We all saw it happen. But a good coach can see the what a good quarterback needs. And I'm going to go over some things that Sean Payton did for Drew Brees. So, well, first of all, when he was at San Diego under Cam Cameron and Marty Schottenheimer, that was a that offense was influenced heavily by Air Coryell and some others, obviously. And Payton's offense is more West Coast. Now, there's a lot of similarities between Air Coryell style offense and the West Coast offense, and they both have evolved tremendously, over the years, and they, all the offenses start to kind of blend together. But there are some definite differences, and some of them weren't in the some of the Schottenheimer and Cam Cameron's offense. They weren't utilizing Drew Brees' skills as well as another offense or someone that tailors it to Drew Brees. So, I mean, Brees didn't have a massive arm, right? It was just, his skill set fit the quick game. And he was incredibly accurate in that quick passing game, right? So he had 7 seasons where he was 70% or higher in completion percentage. That's pretty amazing, really. I mean, even in today's era, that's excellent. So, in when he was in San Diego in his best season, he wasn't utilized appropriately. So when he went to New Orleans, first couple season, Sean Payton saw that Drew Brees was highly accurate, and he realized he was a volume type passer, right? So his attempts went through the roof after coming to New Orleans. By the third season or fourth season, he was consistently one of the top attempts uh, passers in the league, and that worked pretty well for him. I mean, he had a 5,000 yard season, and he had several, a lot of yards, but that was because, and he wasn't throwing it deep very often. So Peyton realized that Drew Brees had talent, and he got the most out of it by turning him into a high volume, quick, high percentage pass player with a lot of timing, which is really great for the West Coast, right? So had these players who were getting good yards after the catch, making Drew Brees look a lot better because that timing pass. And when you're in that West Coast, you rely on yards after the catch based on how where the ball is thrown and how you can throw people open and get them into their from catching the ball and running quicker. So those were several things that that I think Peyton really put together for Drew Brees. So you can see that Drew Brees was an okay quarterback, not elite. And you can see the transformation within 3 years. You can see the transformation of Drew Brees into a Hall of Fame quarterback. And you have to give credit where credit is due. And that was Sean Payton was able to do that. Now, I'm not a big Sean Payton fan, and I said that before on here. I think he's an excellent coach, and I think that he can help definitely turn around this Broncos team. But I have my reservations about him, and I said it before. He Bounty Gate was pretty rough, and he quit on his team. He left, jumped ship when the quarterback situation was becoming a mess, and so was the salary cap. So that's why the Broncos are going to have to trade draft picks in order to get him, because he left a little early on his contract because he didn't want to stick around for those. So that was a bit of that to me was a bit of a character flaw, I think. I also believe that. Well, before I get to that, I'm going to read Michael Ronquillo's comment. Thank you, Michael, for coming in from Facebook. We at Mile High Huddle always appreciate you. And thank you for your support. So good morning, Thomas Hall on Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, go Broncos. We're jumping into the offseason now. We're going to see these coaching interviews finalized, and then you're going to see a decision. And yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Whoever they hire is going to have some sort of issue with some group of people, and then it's going to be great for other people. So it's going to be a bickering match probably on social media, but that's fine. We can definitely enjoy from afar those bickering matches, but I just hope that when we do talk about them, we bring out the facts of the situation and not just start saying things with tertiary content that doesn't really mean things. Clayton Huron, thank you for coming in. Facebook, that is, you've been here quite a few times. I appreciate seeing you on the show. I appreciate your comments. You have some great comments on here. So, yeah, thank you for being here in the morning. Lawrence Rivera also coming in from Facebook. Appreciate that as well. Tom, his question is, Thomas, how you doing, buddy? Did you hear Colin basically doing another take on the Broncos and Sean Payton? Colin Cowherd. Yeah, I listened to a little bit of it. I'm not a devout watcher of Cowherd and the Herd, but he does make some good points. And yeah, I listened to that, and I think I think he thinks that Payton has a great shot at it, as well as most other people. So yeah, it'll be interesting how accurate some of these guys are that are in the media. And Lawrence is coming back in. Saying honestly, guys, I it, yeah, I don't know what time we're getting a big name coach. It's kind of like why McDaniels didn't want to go with the Colts a couple years ago because his wife was worried about the GM's behavior. Wives have a lot of pull and will definitely have a say in moving. If we want Payton, you got to impress his family. Yeah, that's an interesting take. Yeah, obviously, if a family has to buy into any job move for sure. But I'm not really worried about that. I think George Payton is a good GM. I think the ownership is going to do what it takes, and I think any coaching candidate can see that. And I know ESPN ranked the Broncos job number 6. I don't know why they thought that. I mean, maybe it's because Russell Wilson had a down year and he's tied to the team for a while or something like that. But if the coach can come in and get him back to at least potentially close to what he was before, that's a non-issue, and that's why you're hiring these coaches in order to do that. So I think I think it's a desirable location. You got a good ownership. You've got a good, um, you got a good GM if he sticks around. Depending on the what the coach wants, if they want full power. But yeah, I think it's a good location. So yeah, but thank you for that comment. And and like Scott said, that it's a subjective ranking. Like how do you how what metrics are being used to determine whether you're the number one destination or the number 6? People's opinion. I think if you were able to rank salary cap and quarterback and GM somehow with the metrics, you'd probably see that the end ownership. You'd see that the Broncos are I'm sorry, I was having a little technical difficulty there. I fell out of the stream. I hope you all can hear me okay. Um, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my computer this morning, but it kicked me out of the live stream and then said my mic wasn't working. So I hope you can hear me. If you can hear me, Scott, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. We're back on. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. um, I don't remember what I was talking about now after those dang difficulties. I tell you, man, technical stuff, something always goes wrong, but um, we carry on just like we would if we were at work and our computer crash or whatever. So thank you for bearing with me. Um, so back to Sean Payton, right? Back to his coaching prowess a little bit, and we'll get into some other topics here in a minute. So if you look at what he was able to do with Drew Brees, I think you can be confident that he can do something with Russell Wilson, and he's gonna have to do the similar type of things that he did with Drew Brees. Understand what his strengths are and how to add those or accentuate those in the passing game. Clayton here on coming back from Facebook. Thank you for that. Clayton says, I agree coaching was a big issue, but we had a lot of things not go our way this year. Penalties, injuries, fumbles, drop passes, etc. Yeah, I've mentioned that before. It seemed like some bad luck, especially early on, right? That Seattle game 1, I think there was two forced fumbles in that game that bounced right into an offensive lineman's hand, right? So even if the offense was struggling, um, those are two extra possessions that could have won that game, right out of the gate, and they could have started out 3-0, and who knows what would have happened after that. Injuries definitely a factor, but yeah, it's just bad luck. I mean, at one point in the season, the Broncos led the league in forced fumbles and were like towards the bottom in recovered fumbles. So it was just the ball was bouncing the wrong way from early on. So that definitely had some problems. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't just the coaching staff. I mean, you cannot compete in the NFL if you lose your talent to injuries. It's just any team. I don't care if you have the greatest quarterback of all time. If you're down to your third string players across the board in most positions, you're going to struggle. And the Broncos just they couldn't recover from that. So that's an excellent point. It wasn't all on the coach, but even early before all the injuries really started to pile up, you saw that the scheme had its problems. You saw that Nathaniel Hackett had its problems, and it's a small sample size when you look at what Jerry Rossberg did, but he was able to make the appropriate changes and got more out of that team, even with all the injuries, than Nathaniel Hackett did. So I would say a lot of it is on the coach, and I think a lot of that will be fixed with the right coach. Now, who's that going to be, right? Man, it is tough to think about giving away draft picks for a coach because you're gonna not have those impact players in the first round to kind of fill in spots that you need them. So the Broncos need another edge rusher, I believe. I think they got to go with offensive line, and if you're not getting the first round picks, that's where your impact players are most easily found. Now, the draft is definitely a crapshoot, but 2 first rounders and 2 second rounders. I mean, I know that there's reports out there that it's just they're going to give up their first round from the 49ers. That seems really, really light to me. I don't know why the Saints would do anybody any favors, right? Why are they going to just let Sean Payton out of his contract for a single first round draft choice? I know that they need a first round draft choice, but when you look back at what John Gruden got to go to Tampa Bay, I mean, one single first round picks, especially being pretty high or a pretty low first round pick, it seems I don't know. It seems too small for me. I just don't see it. 2 first round picks, maybe 2 first rounds and 2 seconds. That's a lot. And I've created a probability calculator based on combinations of picks. And if you lose those 4 picks, you have a very high. I can't remember the exact. I think it was around 90, almost a 90% probability of hitting on an impact player with those 4 picks. That's a lot to lose. Now, if it's 1 first round pick, it's only it's about 30% probability. So there's a big difference there. But you can get a starter for sure. You could probably get 2 starters out of that, out of those picks. So you got to weigh that. But in the long term, if you believe that the coach is going to be around for another 10 to 15 years, then you take that chance and you hope that you can fill in elsewhere. Jeremy, thank you for coming back in with a comment. I appreciate it. Jeremy coming in from YouTube because if he sits another year, they lose their leverage. He's only under contract until 2024. Well, yeah, I mean, they can, but why would they? I mean, why do another team a favor? I just I don't know. I mean, I would love to see that happen. I'd love to see them get only their first rounder from the 49ers. It'd be great, but it still seems odd to me that they would do another team a favor. At least I think the negotiation is going to be in between there at some point, and maybe they'll just take a lot of cash. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the Waltons can give them a bunch of cash. I don't know. So we'll see. I hope you're right. Kathy's coming in saying hello from Germany. I just read that David Shaw is now a dark horse candidate for the head coach job in Denver, and I like it. To be honest, that's more interesting than Quinn to me. Well, I appreciate you coming in from Germany, and I appreciate talking to you on Twitter often. So thank you for that, Kathy, for that comment. And yeah, I kind of like David Shaw, but there's always question marks for everybody, right? So David Shaw to me seems like a pretty good coach. He has head coaching experience in college, and he has NFL experience as an assistant coach. So he has a lot of good qualities. I don't know, I don't know enough about him whether or not he's really a great lead or not. I do see what he took over for Jim Harbaugh in Stanford, and had some success early on, but that success started to dwindle, and I don't know if that was what caused that. If that was his inability to recruit, and not it wasn't coaching, or if it was coaching, I don't know. But he slowly got that team deteriorated over time, and to the point where they just weren't winning. So I don't know. I have my issues with Quinn. I think Dan Quinn is a solid coaching candidate. He had success in Atlanta. No, there's no denying it. He wasn't Josh McDaniels in his first time around. He went to the Super Bowl. And I've voiced my opinion on Dan Quinn many times. The fact that the question I have for him is, after Kyle Shanahan left, he had LaFleur on staff, and he passed him over for Sarkisian, or however you pronounce his name. And you can talk about, oh, well, they had a pretty decent offense. Well, no, I mean, he took Shanahan's number one scoring offense that scored 34 points per game or 33 points per game, and turned it into a 22 point per game offense. So regardless of how many yards they got, they did not score at nearly the rate that offense was before. And they only changed two positions that season, fullback and guard. And I know that Levitri missed the last few games because of injury, and there were a couple injuries, but it wasn't drastic because the year before, I think Julio Jones missed a couple games for injury. So I don't see that hire. That's the head scratcher for me. But Quinn seems boring, right? But if Quinn can answer those questions this time around, can have a solution to those questions that we talk about, then he's going to be an excellent coach. If he can be paired with, and I worry a little bit about George Payton, because the knock on Quinn, right, was he didn't have the edge rushers that he needed to make his scheme work. And you have George Payton trading away impact edge rushers and Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, and going out and trying to get Randy Gregory, who was a big risk. He drafted Bonito, who so far has not really panned out. I know it's early. So those are questions, but if Dan Quinn answers those two issues, then he's going to be an excellent coach. I'm not high on him. I mean, he was down my list a little bit, but that's it. If he solves those questions, he's going to be an excellent hire. And I don't think people should be upset, because he was a hot name coming out, and when Atlanta hired him, and a lot of teams really wanted to bring him in as a first timer, and he proved that he could win. He also showed that he had a hard time closing out games, obviously, but those are the things. If you pair him with a great GM who can bring in good defensive players, impactful players who can make that play when it's necessary, then you're not going to see that folding, as often as it happened when he was in Atlanta. So I wouldn't put Dan Quinn too far down the list. But again, if he comes in with the same, he doesn't have those solutions, and he can't bring in the good coordinators, and his team's full, then we'll all be like, crap, why the heck did we hire this guy? Why did we see them hire him? But I think just for me, I would probably have Dan Quinn a little bit higher than David Shaw, and it's probably not a knock on Shaw. I think that Dan Quinn may have figured out some of those solutions in his stint there in Dallas. So if he gets hired, we can cross our fingers and hope that that's the case. So, but the other dark horse really for me isn't just Shaw, it's Jim Caldwell. Caldwell I think has a good resume. Not quite as good, I would think, as Quinn, because he stepped into a pretty good situation in Indianapolis, taking over for Dungy, with Peyton Manning, and he did a pretty good job. But his time in Detroit was wonderful. He's another one of those boring picks. Like, again, Jim Caldwell. But boring doesn't mean bad. It's not flashy. It's not like the big money going out and getting Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton, but they're very competent coaches. The biggest risk is hiring. And I think that the the Broncos are really gun shy to hire a first time head coach. So you're going to see somebody coming in that has experience, but none of the people that they're looking at, that they're interviewing, were abject failures. They're not. It's not a Josh McDaniel situation in their first season, right? They were all both. Both of those candidates, Caldwell and Quinn, well, and Payton too, obviously, all had success. All weren't total failures in coming back, and that's what you have to look at first, right? Were they pretty good in their first stint, are there what's fixable? And I think what they did in those organizations were exceptional. They just had some problems, and they just hopefully can fix it the second time around. So we have some talk going on in the chat about bringing Mike Shanahan back. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, at Mike Shanahan's age, even if there wasn't some past history or whatever with the Broncos, I just don't think I don't think he's ready to come back. I mean, he's yeah, he hasn't coached in a decade. Seems like an unlikely choice. I just don't see it. I mean, it would be good for nostalgia, but he's not going to stick around much. You don't want to hire a head coach that's ready to pack it all in. Now he still has a great mind, obviously, and he still can provide consulting or what, like he does a little bit. He talks with his son in the 49ers. So yeah, but I just don't think he wants it anymore, and I don't think the Broncos ownership is going to take a chance on an older coach like that who knows how long he's actually going to coach for. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And so Brad D's coming in with a comment that he likes DeMeco Ryans. Yeah, DeMeco Ryans is an intriguing candidate, and I think if this was the cycle last season, he would have had a better shot. I think after 3 first timers coming in and failing, I think they want something a little more predictable, so to speak, right? Something a little more predictable. And it's going to be a shame because, he's going to end up being probably a pretty good head coach somewhere for a long time. And it's amazing to see, how certain groups get it right. I mean, the Steelers have had 3 coaches, right, in decades, and they nailed it first time around. And, those are how if I was part of the NFL and ownership or whatever, I would definitely be asking them what their process is, because they, some teams just get it right, and maybe it can't be luck, right? It can't all be luck or bad luck. I don't know, but yeah, it's just they have to hit this one right. They have to, and that's why I just have a suspicion that they're interviewing them, but they're not high on the list just for that reason. But I think DeMeco Ryans, and I think Evero is going to get a shot at head coaching. If it's not this year, it'll be next year if he continues to be a good defensive coordinator like he was. I think he's going to get a shot too. So both those coaches could end up being great coaches for a long time, and we'll all be like, dang, why didn't we hire those young hot coaches? But it's a tough one. And another Brad D comment: Quinn is a Chuck Knox. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good way to point out. But Chuck Knox was a heck of a coach, man. He spent a lot of time in the NFL coaching the Rams and the Seahawks, and he was a solid coach. I don't think he ever had the whole team around him to do something great. I mean, Dave Krieg was a pretty good quarterback, but he was an elite quarterback. In Seattle, and Seattle just they didn't have they didn't have the entire team, and they made some mistakes, I thought, in the first round, which kind of hindered them. And and plus they were playing at a time in the same division with the Broncos, who were excellent, and they were winning the division. So he kind of that there, you got to take that into consideration. But again, like I said, you think boring, you think average coach. If Quinn can make those changes, he's going to be much better than people think. And I think people like him. I think players like to play for him. So, that's good. And I'm not like Hackett was well liked, but well liked doesn't mean a good coach. People need to respect you as a coach, and I think they respect Dan Quinn. So, Yeah, I think it boils down to Payton, whether or not the Broncos feel like it's okay to give up what it takes, and then if they don't, if that goes out, then I think it's between Caldwell and Quinn. And Shaw has connections. Don't get me wrong, Shaw. There's a lot of Stanford connections with the ownership, and he's got this interview based on those relationships. I think. So he could sneak in there, but I really think it's between Quinn and Caldwell after that, really. Um, and yeah, Nathaniel Cata coming in saying Seattle had weapons in Largent and Warner. Yeah, they did. They had some weapons. Largent was, obviously one of the best receivers of all time. And I remember watching him, incredible receiver. And Kurt Warner, the original Kurt Warner, not the quarterback, was a good running back. But he wasn't the everything else wasn't good enough to get them over the hump. And then they made that mistake of getting Bosworth in the first round in the supplemental draft. And he didn't pan out. There was a few mistakes that they made during that time, and they did have some weapons for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't enough to get him over the top. So, but I liked Chuck Knox. He's a pretty good coach. Through his time, but not, he's not an elite coach and he's not a Hall of Fame coach. But just because you can compare Quinn to Knox doesn't mean it's going to be a bad hire. Knox was a pretty good hire for the Rams and for Seattle. And Cristiano Roden comes in with a comment. Any thought on who Caldwell and Quinn would bring in as an OC? Yeah, that's a good question. People have been talking about Quinn bringing in Schottenheimer, and I don't know. I don't know who he's going to bring in. Caldwell's a bigger surprise to me. I think both of them. I think that's their who they bring in at OC is huge. Obviously, I think they need to bring somebody in who runs a better version of the West Coast offense than Hackett's for sure. I'm not sold on Schottenheimer. I know there's a relationship with Wilson and Schottenheimer, and the bloodlines there for Schottenheimer are pretty incredible. But I don't know. That's a good question. I will look into a few relationships that I've seen in the past and see who they'd bring in. But there's a name that out there that I like, quarterback coach for the Bengals. I think he'd be a good hire for what he did with Burrow. Similar type of style, West Coast. But it's a good question. I think Caldwell. I don't know who he would bring in as his OC at this point. That's a good question, but I'll see what I can look up and see if I can get back to that question next time, and maybe we'll have something for you. But I think that's for Quinn. That's the biggest question. Can he? When he hired Shanahan, that was a easy pick, really. I mean, the bloodlines and what he was doing, and so there isn't an easy pick out there. Right now, I don't think that that's a known, a brand name like Shanahan. So that's going to be a big question. And then Keith Brugman has a good question, because I kind of scratched my head about this too. He says, I'm so surprised we don't have an interview lined up with Brian Callahan. Yeah, Callahan was interviewed last year, I believe. And I'm surprised too, because to me, that's he's a as a first timer, that's somebody that you should take a look at. And I just love that he has that history with the Broncos. And, that's the thing that I really was frustrated with Nathaniel Hackett. He didn't seem like he cared about rivalries as much, or he didn't seem like he cared about, beating the Raiders, where you have somebody with that past connection, understands, it's not just the fans, but the players here too, right? They want you, the coach, to have that aggressive competitiveness as well. And that was the knock on Hackett. But yeah, I think Brian Callahan, is a good one to hire. I just don't know why they're not talking to him or Frank Reich. BK coming in, YouTube, thank you. Latest DraftKings odd have Payton as the favorite now. Yeah, I mean, plus 175. Yeah, I mean, he obviously is the favorite, but I don't put too much stock into draft or into the betting odds because it's not like they have this insider information. I mean, betting odds is basically popular opinion throughout the country, right? It depends. They don't want to lose money, so they change the odds based on what people are betting on. So it's not like they know more than anybody else. They want to make sure those odds are evenly dispersed so they don't lose a lot of money when the whoever wins comes to collect. So he is obviously the favorite, but I don't think they have any insider information that's going to indicate that he's imminent to hire or anything like that. But he has to be the favorite. I mean, why wouldn't he be? I want to know what it's going to take to get it. That's the big question. What's it going to take? And if they're real, if they're willing to do it. And it's just that's tough. I don't know. That's a tough one for me to swallow. If it's 4 picks, that's hard. That's a tough one. G. Spencer has a good candidate for OC. Brian Griese for offensive coordinator. Dan Quinn could bring in Brian Griese. Yeah, I don't know if he would. I don't know if there's a connection there with Dan Quinn, but Griese has done a pretty dang good job. I'm surprised, right? I mean, I remember Brian Griese from the Broncos, and he went to the Bears, and he's a decent quarterback. Had one really, really exceptional year throwing the ball. But I was surprised when he came out of the booth and became the quarterbacks coach for the 49ers there, and he's done an excellent job. I mean, he's done a really good job with Brock Purdy. There's no doubt. I don't know if there's a connection there with Brian Griese, and it'd definitely be an interesting hire. I would like to see a little more success over time before I would grab Brian Griese as offensive coordinator. I think it's a single season there, so I'd like a little more experience, a little more meat on the bone before I jumped in the Brian Griese train. But yeah, there's no doubt that he's done a good job and surprised me. I thought I was a head scratcher for me, but when you see these people come out of the booth and start coaching, or whatever's, or become a GM. John Lynch, I was surprised with that hire too as a GM. So, you never know, but that's a good thought. I don't know, that'd be interesting. It'd be an interesting pairing. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's any connection there at all, but again, that's going to be huge for Quinn, who he gets as coordinators, because that was the struggle. That was one of his downfalls, I think, in Atlanta. So, all right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming in. I've got to end the show now. It's getting late. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the discussion. Join next week. Like the show. Give Scott and myself a follow on Twitter so we can have some good discussions outside of the show. And thank you very much for joining. Have a great day, Broncos fans.